boys and dolls, and welcome to yet another special edition of Liberty Update. Today I'm talking Charlottesville. To be completely frank, I was not going to make a video about this, but I got so many requests and the events of the past weekend have completely dwarfed anything else that happened in the news and drowned out anything else that I could have talked about. The original goal of the Unite the Right protest that took place in Charlottesville, Virginia last weekend was to preserve a statue of General Robert E. Lee in a city park. The statue was first gifted to the city in 1924 and local officials have been calling for its removal since about 2012. On one side, people claimed the monument memorialized and glorified white supremacy. On the other, people raised the concern that the community was trying to erase history. On the backs of petitions from high school students claiming the monument was offensive, the city council voted to remove the statue and change the name of the park from Lee Park to Emancipation Park. Enter Jason Kessler, who disagreed both with the name change and the planned removal of the statue. He planned a rally, received permits, and then the city gave permits to counter-protesters, tried to revoke Kessler's permit, and Kessler won in federal court. The city made no moves to try and modify or revoke the permits they'd given to counter-protesters. An important point to make here is that when Charlottesville tried to revoke the rally's permit and force them to another location, it was the ACLU that came to Kessler's rescue. Think about that for a moment. The ACLU stood up for freedom of speech, even if it might be speech that they didn't agree with. Because that is, ladies and gentlemen, the definition of free speech. Either you believe everyone should be able to speak freely, even if what they're speaking is hate, or you endorse censoring people through violence. This is one issue where there's not really a lot of gray area. Now, the sole stated reason for the rally, according to court documents, was to protest the renaming of the park. So, how exactly did this rally become a violent, Nazi-saluting David Duke clusterfuck? Originally, the term alt-right was used for edgelords that trolled Reddit and 4chan with dank memes and encompassed almost anyone who was conservative but didn't really fit in philosophically with the likes of Paul Ryan or John McCain or any of the other traditional conservatives. But big cable news networks just didn't know what to think about these people because God forbid we diverge from the typical left-right paradigm and, with the help of Hillary Clinton, hijacked the term until it became synonymous with racism. Such an association will inevitably actually bring those people on board. It seems that something similar happened with the rallies in Charlottesville, except this time it wasn't the media doing the hijacking. It was actual racists and neo-Nazis. In any group, there's going to be extremists and bad apples. I think it's necessary to point out that the true racists and neo-Nazis and the alt-right are probably not the norm. I mean, Milo Yiannopoulos is gay, part Jewish, and dates black guys, and is pretty vocal about it.
The amount of black dick that's been in my mouth. It's really I must be the most self-loathing white supremacist in the world.
Interestingly, while I was researching this event, I fell upon an article over at Occidental Dissent, written by a proud and self-proclaimed white supremacist, that asked all manner of Republicans, conservatives, alt-righters, and supremacists to come together for the cause despite their differences. So do I think everyone who attended the rally was a Nazi or KKK member? No. But some of them were. And when your little shindig starts with a bunch of white guys carrying tiki torches and giving the Nazi salute, it definitely does not look good. At that point, you have to expect that people are going to make assumptions and that those assumptions are probably going to be negative. Even though the rally was officially scheduled for Saturday, hundreds of people descended on the University of Virginia campus with tiki torches and chanting various things like, "You will not replace us," and "blood and soil," which is the English translation of a Nazi slogan. According to several reports, Antifa were ready and waiting at the park the following day before the Unite the Right people even arrived. By several accounts, these counter-demonstrators aimed to block the Unite the Right attendees from entering the park. The counter-demonstrators included not only the usual Antifa, but also Black Lives Matter and armed members of Redneck Revolt, a radical left militia. According to the ACLU, police were ordered to stand down and did not intervene or work to separate both sides until after the violence had already began, presumably in order to call it an unlawful assembly. Thus ensued the typical alt-right versus Antifa dance that we've now seen several times before, complete with poles, flags, shields, mace, bottles filled with cement, and militia members acting as security. The rally was labeled an unlawful assembly, and a state of emergency was declared, with police ordering the crowds to disperse even before the rally began. Witnesses say the air was filled with pepper spray, tear gas, and bottles of urine, keeping things classy. There have also been reports of Antifa carrying makeshift flamethrowers and balloons filled with literal shit. Virginia's anti-gun Governor Terry McAuliffe claimed that police were unprepared and outgunned, interestingly also noting that somehow, despite this, not a single shot was fired and there was no property damage. The city's trash cans, for now, are safe. The police have confirmed that no shots were fired and no property was damaged, but have disputed the governor's claims that Unite the Right attendees were armed to the teeth with automatic weapons. However, the rally was not without casualties. Not long after the start of the skirmishes, James Fields drove his car into a crowd of counter-protesters, killing one woman and injuring dozens. 2 state police officers also died in a helicopter crash that some outlets say was caused by an alt-right drone, but official accounts have ruled out foul play. So those were the basic events. Now, on to the fallout. A lot of people are crying out that the event is receiving biased media coverage, and they're probably right. But if you know the media is already against your cause and takes every chance it gets to vilify you, having people showing up waving Nazi flags isn't going to help your case or convince anyone to treat you fairly. Some on the Unite the Right side claim that these outright Nazis were plants or agents attempting to delegitimize the movement. Zero Hedge points to an ad on Craigslist recruiting paid protesters and actors for, quote, everything from rallies to protests to corporate PR stunts. A week before, though it should be noted that the ad was recruiting for the Charlotte, North Carolina area and not Charlottesville. Though, of course, the company, Crowds On Demand, says that they'll cover travel expenses and will ship people anywhere in the U.S. Various political figures and armchair activists alike are blaming Trump and the ACLU. It was neither Trump nor the ACLU that took Heather Heyer's life. It was not freedom of speech that incited the violence last Saturday. It was individual people stuck in groupthink that committed that violence. Chris Cantwell was there and apparently became even bolder and angrier since losing some weight. His former celebritarian status was apparently not enough, and he has now given up libertarian brutalism and free market capitalism for white supremacy because it will get him more attention. As a result, warrants have been put out for his arrest, videos of him crying about it are rampant on the internet, and nearly every single ounce of his social media presence has been nuked. He was even removed from OkCupid, which I bet is super embarrassing.
I don't know what to do. I need guidance. We've been coordinating with law enforcement the entire time. Every step of the way we've tried to do the right thing. And they just won't stop.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
The Twitter account Yes You're Racist is using social media to dox people who attended the rally. Many of these people claim they are not racists, but again, when you're marching with torches, it looks pretty bad. Some woman named Laura Loomer, who I'm told is an alt-right journalist, doxed Mike Enoch's mother on Twitter and then mocked him when he asked her to remove it. The original owner of the car used in the attack was also doxxed and received death threats, even though he hasn't owned the car for some time. It's been revealed that James Fields has a history of violence and police involvement. He is being used as an exemplar of all alt-right people, despite the fact that he is very clearly mentally ill. People are gnashing their teeth at Donald Trump for condemning violence and hatred on many sides, despite the fact that there has been terrible violence on both sides. He later denounced racism and Nazism, but this was seen as too little too late, and lawmakers have vowed to introduce articles of impeachment. Again. The mayor of Baltimore had several Confederate monuments removed overnight. She claims that this has now made the city a safe space. People on both sides of the aisle asked what's next, and jokingly asked if the Founding Fathers would be targeted next. And then CBS reported that a Chicago pastor has called for the removal of a statue of George Washington from Washington Park, and for the park to be renamed as Washington Once Owned Slaves. And then Al Sharpton called for the Jefferson Memorial to be removed from all public funding because Jefferson also owned slaves. CNN has labeled the extreme right as the #1 domestic terror threat in the U.S. They urge their watchers to just look it up.
Just look at the stats. The #1 domestic terror threat in the United States is the extreme right.
Vandals have spray painted the word Nazis on the New Hampshire's GOP headquarters. An attack in Barcelona, Spain, in which terrorists drove a vehicle into a crowd of people, was at first labeled a copycat of Charlottesville, despite the fact that this has been a popular terrorist tactic. ISIS has since claimed responsibility for the attack. What both sides are forgetting is that the very things they're mad about are only made possible by big government. Black Lives Matter and social justice warriors always talk about institutional racism, but who's the institution?
Government. We have a government. Government.
On the government.
The government.
The answer to these problems is thus not more government, not more speech policing, and not new laws to revoke old ones. I do agree with one thing Kessler said. People do get violent when they feel they have lost their voice. And when you have events like Evergreen State College and the riots at Berkeley to shut down Milo Yiannopoulos and conservative speakers getting turned away left and right and people constantly being accused of racism and sexism and microaggressions, it's easy to see why people might feel like they've lost their voice. Censoring hate speech isn't going to stop people from hating or being angry. If anything, it's only going to fuel the fire. Every day, millions of Americans go to work and go to church and have barbecues, play with their kids, and go about their day without a single racist or sexist or hate-filled thought in their heads. The events of Charlottesville do not represent the majority of non-liberals, so stop treating them as such and do not allow the actions of a few hundred people to be yet another reason to take away what little freedoms we have left. And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes your Liberty-related news for the week. If you're looking for more Liberty Doll this week, you can catch me on the next episode of Beauty and the Beta, hosted by Matt Christensen and Blonde in the Belly of the Beast. You can also always find me over on Twitter, VidMe, Facebook, Minds, and now Gab, all of which I will link in the description below. And of course, if you really like my videos and want to help support my channel, you can support me over on Patreon or with a one-time donation through PayPal. And as always, thanks for watching and helping me to spread the message of liberty.